Welcome to Conversations with Personal Finance Champions. Here we talk with leaders that are working toward economic empowerment through financial education. Today we have a great guest, Ben Joergens. He's the Director of Financial Empowerment for Old National Bank. Ben and I go way back, so there's a lot of things that I could say to introduce him. I could talk about all the awards he's won for financial education. I won't list them off here, but we'll mention them through the show. I could tell you how he's serving multiple states with quality financial education programming, serving nonprofits, schools, colleges, a variety of organizations really geared toward making a difference in their life. But when I was thinking about how to introduce Ben, one thing stuck in my mind. You talked with one of our team members a couple years ago, Trevor Stoll. And I want to introduce Trevor real quick because he's a very analytical, very smart guy. But after one of his conversations, he got very animated. I said, how did that conversation with Ben go? And he said to me, Ben is built for this role. This role is Ben. If I can design a job and a task for somebody, Ben would be perfect for this role. He went on for a few minutes. It stands out because he doesn't get animated too much, but he went on to say, you always take on bigger challenges than needed to really make sure the program's doing best for those you're serving. That really stood out to me. And I think I'm going to steal his introduction to welcome you to the show, Ben.
Well, thank you, Vince. It's a very kind introduction, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here.
And piggybacking off what Trevor said, you obviously have a passion for what you're doing. You love what you're doing. What led you down this path? What brought you into financial education in the first place?
Yeah, it's an interesting path, Vince, because I've been with the bank 25 years. I started in college as a teller, did a variety of other roles. But when I was in our Kentucky markets, I was a commercial lender. And at the time, I was put in a market where I didn't know a single person. So I got involved with community and nonprofits. And my mentor at the time says, you need to get on boards and volunteering. And when I did this, I got into an area where I realized many families struggled with financial decisions. And we were helping, fund Christmases and Thanksgivings and all this sort of thing. And I realized, I had fun helping these people get into a path of financial stability. And while it wasn't a part of my role or anywhere I thought I'd go, to be honest, I got really involved in doing education with the different nonprofits I was on. So, fast forward doing that a few years and heavily involved with the chamber and things like that. Our CEO at the time, Bob Jones, designed a role for financial empowerment. And after doing a variety of other roles, and I couldn't do what I do today without doing those previous roles. But I really realized I had a passion for this education. And when the role opened up, I was glad to step in and take it to where we're at today.
That's a great story. And I love the fact that you started boots on the ground. I know a lot of people are put into roles like this without having that in front of person experience. And I think that makes a big difference when you know what it's like to teach a class and to promote financial education, help these people. How do you think that helped you in your role here today?
Yeah, because if I were to go back and do the roles like in the banking center with the education that I know now, I would have been a much better referrer of business and things like that. But it really helped me understand what clients faced on a day-to-day basis. In the commercial lending world, while many of them did really well with their businesses, a lot of them struggled financially on the personal side. So being able to take all those different things that I was able to learn over the years from the analytical side, the banking center side, the commercial side, worked in our M&A for a little bit to understand the full banking aspect of it. And I was able to pull all those together to teach not just personal finance, but, whether it's business finance or understanding concepts of treasury, things that I never thought I would be a part of. I see now that all those other educational opportunities, whether it being personal finance or just bank in general, was able to give me the ability to build a library of financial topics that I can help people with today on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, great background there. And just if you could take a time machine back to when this director of financial empowerment role opened up, what did it look like? Like, what was day one like? What were you coming in with, and what were some of the early milestones you hit? And just to give people we'll talk about how it's grown, how many people you're impacting today, but I want to take people back to those early days of Ben leading those programs.
Yeah, so day one, I came in with a blank slate. We had done education in the past, but to be honest, we had a lot of people out there in the field through volunteerism doing some great educational work. The idea was to build a library of financial tools that we could then instrument like consistent education throughout the entire footprint, right? So this is when I stumbled at looking at different vendors, and we met you, Vince, and Trevor through the NFEC, and we realized it was the perfect partnership for us to be able to build this library of comprehensive financial education curriculum that we can then take to the field. So it's taught in Indiana as the same as Chicago, Minnesota, Michigan, throughout the footprint. And that was really the goal, is to start from ground zero, so to speak, and build this library to build financial education to be a integral part of what we do at Old National.
That's wonderful. And the interesting thing is that I love that you went above and beyond as far as really customizing it with your own personnel contributing to videos. I also love the fact that it wasn't just you were leading. You talked to people. You did focus groups of the team members. You talked to all the people in the communities that you were serving. So it wasn't, you were leading this, but you got input from these other people and other important players, stakeholders that were important to the success here. What led you down that path, and how do you think that creating that together with them has benefited the program?
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the things I wanted to do is I always had this mindset of I know what to teach and how to teach it, right? But then I got into the field and I'm like, I really want to make sure that we're really reaching the same points of view and education that the people that we're teaching really want to know about. So an example of that was when we were in the Henderson County Detention Center. I never thought I'd teach in prison, but I learned the struggles, the barriers they faced. And so we try to build comprehensive education, to help them when they leave that system, the judicial system, to be able to implement, solid financial principles in their life. So I learned that we created bank account products, the National Bank On movement. We created a certified account through understanding what our folks wanted for them that weren't coming into the banking centers now, like what was holding them back. And so I found out, while I thought in my own mind originally that I could just do this on my own, it was so much more beneficial to find out what people really wanted and build programs and products around what was really going to help them be more successful.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job of segmenting and really customizing based on the needs of your audience. And you serve very diverse audiences, from the prison system to the colleges and academia to nonprofits. Why don't you share with our audience just the different groups you serve? And, I think maybe if you can dovetail in, how you're customizing that to really meet their core needs.
Yeah, because I realize that not everyone likes to learn the same way, right, Vince? Some people love in-person learning. We built an e-learning platform through your all's help to be able to reach people that like that self-paced environment. And the goal was to find people where they're at. So like, in Chicago, I appear on CAN TV and we do, weekly episodes to reach the Chicago audience. We've gotten the bank to go on Instagram, Facebook. We got on TikTok. We're hoping it stays open, right? But things look good there. But I realized through this efforts is, while I would think that everybody would love to hear from me, we've utilized our younger folks to do talking points on TikTok videos, and we're supplying them with the education to reach people in their space. At Old National, we've built a podcast now. This was a dream of mine for 3 or 4 years, and our CEO Jim Ryan was like, "Let's just go for it." As one of my most recent guests, actually, and so we're looking to find people like within the bank and then outside the bank through influencers, professional athletes. Not everybody, we see that glamorous journey where they're at now, but so many of them have struggled on the way to get there. So we want to share that story to really help people understand that people that got to their point of success, not just by landing in it, but by really working hard, and they all struggled, is what I'm finding out, whether it's, doctors, lawyers, athletes. The journey is a whole story in itself, and we want to share those lessons and then help educate people to be able to get to their dreams and goals, but by sacrificing maybe certain things in a budgeting cycle or understanding their credit. But so many of these different principles apply to people in their lives. We want to help them on that journey to become more successful.
I love that. It's neat. I started to, when I was younger, I was focused on the youth. I was the one teaching it. Now I'm not cool. We brought in people that are cool now that can connect with them. So I love what you're doing, especially across all the platforms. And really, I think it takes a special organization as well. I had a conversation with a bank up, I won't mention where, but they were trying to meet their CRA requirements. And I said, "What type of outcomes are you looking for?" And she responded, "Oh, we just need this number of people." Right? So, okay, well, with that number of people, what type of outcomes are you trying to achieve with them? She said, we don't measure that. I just need number of people, heads and seats and so forth to measure. And I love that you take a completely different approach to her and are really focused on outcomes and customizing things. And that takes extra time, effort, and energy. And it takes not only you as a leader, but also an organization willing to back that extra time, effort, and energy. What would you say to those that may be in a role where they have that passion like you? I talk with a lot of people that have that passion, but are kind of hampered by that leadership where it's not letting them move forward in the fashion that they want. What kind of, I guess let's start with, what are the benefits of being with Old National? How are they helping you?
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to somebody that's in a role where they're kind of being held down by management?
That's a great question. And by the way, Vince, I think you're still cool. So I get it bringing in younger people, but I still think you're a cool guy.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
But yeah, so I will say that our leadership here at Old National has been so supportive. I mean, it's one of the pillars of what we do in the business side. So I like to focus on an impact, right? So when we're doing e-learning, I'm sharing data with our clients and how their employees are doing, or whether it's the university students. So we really want to gauge, are they not just taking the courses, but are they really understanding it and being able to apply it? There's an ROI perspective when it comes to education. I think as a bank, when you can show your leadership that there is the ability to generate income. So, for example, I work closely with our marketing department, and we create content. Outside of my office is our studio, and we film. Not just promoting products, but we do educational videos now that incorporate through our real life finance material that we created together. Why this is beneficial and why this is important in the long term, and how to build assets. And so we really want to take it from education into action. And I think when you show leadership that is possible and you can show that data, then they're going to be more inclined to expand the opportunities of financial education within that network.
Makes a lot of sense to me. And the thing I love too about what you're doing, you're connecting with people at so many touch points, right? And you mentioned this earlier, but I think it's a very important point for everybody out there. You're not just having a live event and then one and done, they'll never see you again. They have a live event, they connect with you or one of your educators, they like what it is. Now they can go watch your real life finance podcast. Now they can go onto TikTok. Now they go onto these other channels. Now they can go onto Old National Bank and go to their your e-learning. So there's so many different channels that you can connect with them through. And I think that longer term relationship is important. And you see you yourself and the team members there really building trusted relationships through this nurturing of education through these different touch points.
Yeah, and that's the biggest piece. It's all about relationships, right? I remember going back to the section of the prison that I talked at. I'm standing in front of 120 women that have been convicted of substance abuse crimes. Many of them had very bad experiences with men in their life. And here you have a guy coming in from a bank wearing a suit that they probably don't want to listen to, right? I think my first 2 weeks were really just about building a relationship and rapport with them so they could build trust. So I'm a big fan of not doing the one and done workshop. I mean, we do them, right? And it happens. But I think the more that you build that solid trust with your audience, and I'm a big believer in long-term education, let's do something weekly or bi-weekly, but consistently, so we can not only build a relationship and rapport, but then when that trust builds up, then it starts turning into action from an educational standpoint versus just a sales pitch, so to speak, on what should be good for them.
I love that. I think that's the foundation and root of any type of education. If you can connect with people, build that relationship, build that, where they understand you, why you're there. Yeah, you don't match that audience, but they understand your why you're there, and they know that you're there to help. I think a lot of programs are almost rushed just because of time crunches, and that's tough to build that relationship. But it's nice you're able to take those time. It reminds me of when I first started back, my first volunteer work was with Orange County Juvenile Hall, and it was a year-long program. I had a very similar thing, but I wasn't as skilled then. I was kind of forcing some things, and I realized, hey, I need to take some time back and really engender their support and help them understand why I'm there, as opposed to just being somebody trying to force them into something. So I like that you're able to take that time and deepen that relationship. When you have that, they're going to listen more, they're going to follow what you say more and be more inspired by you. So that's great to hear.
And we even brought in, I will add, Vince, we brought in leadership, like graduation programs. I mean, our CEO even showed up at these events where we gave them pizza and things like that. And they were like, wow, this bank really, does mean what they say. So I encourage other banks that are doing this is get your leadership involved. And when they can see the impact directly, it makes it even much more bigger success and bigger opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think anytime that somebody is taking time out of their day, it shows, hey, they're committed. You're going there multiple times. The CEO roles, and that's a big thing. And I mean, that's to me the definition of community banking, right? And I think it's almost been lost by the wayside in many areas. With this, online banking, all that. But I think, the reason people choose community banks is because they built those relationships. They have that person they can trust. And you even went beyond that because you have educators, I think several hundred now, I might be off on the numbers a little bit. In how many states now are you in?
We're in 8 states now. We just expanded. I think when I started the bank, Vince, we were like 9 billion. Now we're up to 50 and soon to be 70 after our latest partnership takes place. Over 230 instructors when we started with, I think, 5. So it's been amazing to see the growth.
And, I think that too, it gives a community vibe because they have somebody local, right? And these people are in these various markets that know the market, that are going out and delivering this programming to the communities. What are some of the feedback from the educators? What are some of the results they're seeing, and how does that trickle back up to you?
Yeah, so everything was great until COVID hit, right? And then nobody would allow us to come back in during that time. So now that we've kind of gotten past that, we're seeing the numbers pick back up. And at the beginning, the instructors may be a little hesitant to get out, but I can tell you once they did, they would call me like, oh, this is great. I'm going to keep doing this, right? I think we had a goal last year to reach 14,000 people, and we ended up reaching over 30,600. We've expanded our curriculum through your all's help to identify certain lessons in Spanish, right? And I think we had a goal to reach 1,000. We've reached nearly 3,000. So what we're seeing is more people are getting on board and wanting to do this. And now we've actually built it into our model for some of our personal bankers on a pathway to growth within the retail side to have a license kind of be part of their job. So it's really getting them not only the confidence to go out and speak, but now they're having deeper discussions with their clients as well. And that's kind of the end goal. If I would have known what I know now, how much more I would have been a more solid banker when I was in that retail side. So it's not only just doing good service to the community, but it's also benefiting our clients as well, along with the individuals doing it, because they're helping their own finances as well.
Very true. Yeah, I think back to my time in financial services about going on 2 decades ago, not to age myself, but, I think back and, a lot of my role was just educating. You're educating the clients on a product or service you're offering. And, some of the techniques and strategies I learned. And back then, I'm a very analytical person myself. So, if the numbers made sense, why aren't you doing it, right? But just understanding the emotions, the behavior, the psychology, the habits, everything behind the decision-making process was an eye-opener for me as I got more and more involved in the financial education space. That was a big eye opener for myself as well. But I can relate to that. I wish I knew then what I know now. I'd have been much better at my role in my job. But hey, it's all about growth, and you've been continuing to grow and expand and do some cool things. And I guess what's the next phase for Ben there at Old National and Old National Bank itself?
Yeah, from a bank standpoint, we continue to grow, which is a great thing, right? We've expanded. I've been through many partnerships and seen this bank grow from 9 billion to be 70 here pretty soon. For me, I'm in a space that I absolutely love. When I went to school, Vince, I wanted to be a teacher. I started working at a bank as a 19-year-old student, and fast forward, I never thought I'd still be here. Now I get to teach at a bank. So it's one of those things that I just see us adapting with whatever the current thing is. And I hope that I can continue doing the educational space for the rest of my career, because being able to help people, even if it's one person at a time, is such a gratifying experience to see people change their behavior from a psychology standpoint. But when you can see them reach those goals, it's just it's a dream come true. And being able to take it from starting at scratch to now having in-person workshops and e-learning and Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, a podcast. We just really want to continue to grow to reach people where they're at, because we know not everybody likes to learn the same way.
Very true. And any stories that stick out to you, maybe some people you taught or had experiences with that where hey, I made a real difference in this person's life. Any stories that stick out to you?
There was one gentleman when we first began this in one of our Kentucky markets. He was a Habitat homeowner, and worked with him for years. And I remember the day that he paid off his home. And he told me, he's like, Ben, I never thought I would be able to do this. And he's like, now I have so much cash flow coming in that I can do other things that I want. And him and his wife and kids were able to live a successful life. And it's neat to see things like that. Speaking at college campuses, you never know what they're going to, really get from it. And I've had amazing experiences where people come and tell me, I took what you taught us today and I implemented it in my life. I've seen people in the jail become small business owners, whether it be a beautician at a salon that's now her own 1099, contract worker, to opening their own 529 accounts for their kids. Little stories like that just resonate a long way. And then I'll say one on the commercial side, working with the business, we had the opportunity to present that was a current 401k client. And I remember the representative saying, I don't know if they're in this education stuff, but let's go talk to them. So we met with them. I don't think any business has ever said no because, who doesn't want their employees to be more well off? But not only were we doing education for all 400 employees on a regular basis at this company, we're invited to their new hire employee orientations where they're all on the e-learning platform. I mean, it's just one of those things to see that when a company believes in educating their workforce, not only is it statistically better for them, because hiring people is expensive, right? And when they can retain those employees, it makes it much easier. But seeing them from take a small start to now expanding it as a part of integral way of onboarding their own employees. And we meet one-on-one with them a lot of times to do one-on-one coaching as well. So that was a neat success story.
I think those keep the fuel going. It's the fuel to the fire, right?
Yes.
Me, I've been more behind the scenes lately, but it trickles up from our educators, people like you. I get inspired from that as well. That's great. And, one sense of what you're doing there, a lot of it's about collaboration. I would consider you a master collaborator just because of how many organizations you're serving, how many groups you're serving. What strategies or tips could you give to some of our people that are starting out looking to collaborate with nonprofits, corporations, colleges, and other groups? How do you reach out to them, and what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, I think for me, it was not necessarily asking for the opportunity right away, right? For me, it was, hey, let's go to lunch and let's just talk about what you do, what we do, and see if there's any fit for us. So I never really asked for the business like right away, right? Whether it's a nonprofit or what, let's just find out what your needs are. Because I'm not going to come in as a sales guy and pitch what I've got to offer for you until I understand what your needs are. And then building a platform or a layout of presentational topics for them on what they really need. So for me, it's just about building relationships. Once the relationship is built and the trust is built with either the nonprofit or the university, and then sharing testimonials, when you do have something that goes well, ask them, say, hey, if I'm working with somebody, can you speak to them and tell them about the success that we had? Never be afraid to ask for people to support you in your efforts, because when it's working well, take advantage of that and be able to share those experiences with others. But when you do have the trust built up, just ask them. I remember going to my first university, I'm like, okay, I know some people there. Let's just talk and share some stories. Like when I was a college student, I got into credit card debt. I didn't understand this stuff, right? And I shared those experiences and I said, I'd love to bring the knowledge that I know now that I wish I would have had with your students' age. And could you just entertain us to be able to talk to a few of them, maybe in one classroom and see how it goes? Fast forward now, we're speaking to 400 kids on one day, doing it back-to-back days and reaching, hundreds and hundreds of children, students, young adults, I should say, that are on that pathway because they want to see them succeed, right? They want them to pay back their student loans. They want them to see them, continue to find a job that they love. And just asking for that once you build a relationship, like I said, I don't think I've ever been told no. It's just having the courage to go for it.
That's awesome. Some very big golden nuggets there. I think the key is relationship, more of a consultative conversation. The big thing we always try to combat out there, or not combat, but educate people from doing, is being that financial education salesperson. I have the free 90-minute retirement planning workshop. And you'd be surprised. That's what the majority of what we see out there, especially financial services trying to get into companies and so forth. And I'm like, okay, how do you approach them? They're like, we offer a free thing and they say no. Well, it's like, okay, well, they get offered that a million times. But you, by building relationships, being that consultant, what do you need? How can I help? How can I serve? I think that's just a completely different approach. I like the fact that you're offering not a vast program. On that last example, you didn't offer a vast program. You said, hey, let's see if I can get into one or two classes, right? So like a pilot program. Hey, if that works, we can expand from there. I love that strategy as well. And I think that just adds comfort to everybody. In addition, you as the educator, you as the program lead, are able to modify and change things based on the results of that class. So it gives some time to actually enhance what you're doing there. So I love that strategy, and I would say replay that 2 or 3 times. Everybody wanting to form relationships with organizations. What he said there is golden egg nugget information.
And I would add, just listen, right? Like, it's one of those things is just listen. You're probably going to get everything that you want from a conversation, because what I've learned from business owners and they love to talk. They love to share their story. So don't be so inclined to try to sell the idea or the concept, because you're probably going to get the answers that you wanted just during the conversation. But active listening goes a long way too.
Very true. Active listening, paying attention. I always like to write things down and show that, hey, I'm engaged and going to remember that the next day. But I think that's a real critical element there. And I just want to bridge over to some of the newer media you're doing now. I know you're on their podcast, Real Life Finance podcast. Yep. Thank you. How many times? It looks like a newer podcast. I think you have about a dozen under your belt. Where are we at?
Yeah, we started several months back, and we were around between 1 to 2 a month, so kind of that bi-weekly basis. I think we've done 6 or so. Just filmed another one, getting ready to be released. We're getting them lined up for the rest of the year. We've got some real exciting guests, which is fun. So we've done a lot of the internal banking side. Our first guest was a guy that played in the NBA that works for us and shared his journey through playing overseas. And it's just sharing those examples of what people went through. Potentially, we have some big name guests that I wish I could say today of who they're going to be. So stay tuned.
Yeah, give us some initials at least. Some initials. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there you go. But it's some names that people would definitely know. But what I've learned is people have an amazing story to tell. And so while we're not going to be teaching per se, but through storytelling, we can share some examples that while we may see these people on TV, they maybe not have had all the glamour, their whole life, right? They went through these things and lessons they've learned and what they wish they would have learned at a younger age, especially athletes, on managing money in the correct way, not, avoiding some of the scams out there. But I've seen very successful people, whether it be doctors, lawyers too, that sometimes they struggle with money too. So I do want to add that when you're talking to people, never think it's just your low income or your moderate income. Anybody of all income backgrounds may need some assistance when it comes to education. And I've learned that through our work here at the bank. And so we're doing partnerships with doctors and residents and things like that. And most people would shy away from that, but it doesn't matter what people make. It's really about how much they save, and it's all about lifestyle choices. So whatever background these people may come from, which we're learning from the podcast side as well, there's always opportunities to improve.
Definitely. I noticed that too in my time coaching actively and also in the financial services. You would talk to somebody, they'd sound very professional. You would know the neighborhood they live in, the home, they have a couple cars, and they're a couple months away from being in problems, right? But from the outside, everything looks wonderful. So I think that is a very good tip and strategy is to not discount anybody out there. The other point is with you and your podcast, I think I get a glimpse into how you handle your collaborations. You are a great active listener. You ask good questions. You seem very comfortable asking these questions. It seems like you've been doing it a very long time, so you seem like a natural host. How's that role as a host been for you? And does it kind of mirror what you do when you're having those collaborative meetings?
That's a great question. So, at the beginning, I had this idea in my mind of how it would go. And I love it because nothing is scripted. It's all raw. And I think having that civil conversation, just like we're doing today, Vince, it's natural. And you get to know people on a deeper level. And it's fun doing your research on your guests too, to maybe surprise them. Like I surprised Jim Ryan, our CEO, on a few things that he didn't think I knew. So it's fun to kind of do that journalistic approach to it. And get to know people. And when you kind of break that mold, as people see them as a certain business person, beginning to know them on an individual level is really what's made this fun. And we do it in a laid back, sit down environment, no script, on purpose. So we just have, civil conversations. And I build a lot of humor into my presentations typically. You'll see some of those on whether it's the podcast or our Arcane TV show in Chicago. But I realize that, sometimes finance isn't the sexiest thing to talk about. So I like building humor into it. Not only does it kind of break the ice a little bit, but it gets people relatable and laughing and helps build that trust too.
Yeah, very true. And I think you bring up a great point because everybody has their own unique personality. Ben, outgoing, personable, humorous, right? That's his personality. He's authentic in front of the class. Other people, you may be analytical. That's perfectly fine as long as you're your authentic self. If you're very analytical and you present, that's fine. You don't have to go try to pull in jokes or things that don't fit. I always find it, I think a big challenge is when people move from. I see this quite a bit when people move from teaching the youth sector to getting to that next age level. They'll try to bring in the cool things that are said at that newer, younger age level, but it comes off strange. So you can be authentic to yourself, you can be humorous and so forth. But I think you just being able to be yourself builds trust. And you can have some fun. I've vocalized some rap songs before.
Yep.
It took the class a few minutes to get what I was doing. When they did, they got a good chuckle out of that.
Yeah, it's knowing your audience, right? So like when I'm teaching younger kids, like my kids' classes, I use a lot of the Gen Z language to feel hip with them, and when I'm teaching engineers, it's completely different. So it's tailoring and knowing your audience.
Exactly. And it makes them know that, hey, you've done the research to know who they are and you're saying it in a fun way, right? And that really builds a deep connection. For those people out there, and just the next stage is you're going to be continuing to do the podcasts and build out those various channels. Where could we find you in those various channels? Just if you can let us know.
Absolutely. So on TikTok, Instagram, all those, just search for Old National or Old National Bancorp. If for the podcast, we're on all different platforms. Just search for Real Life Finance, or you can search for Ben Joergens. I think it comes up both ways. Put that reminder on to alert you, of course, when a new episode comes out. But searching just for our main company name, you're going to find us out there.
Wonderful. And what states are you serving? So if people are in those states, they can reach out to you and let them know how they can reach out to your organization, see if there's some events and things going on in their local area.
Absolutely. So, we're in Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Tennessee. Did I say Illinois yet? Illinois. Yeah, so kind of that Midwestern area, right? We've expanded more in the Minnesota market. The nice thing is through our website at oldnational.com/RLF for Real Life Finance, you can request workshops. So if you're in any of those markets, you can request a workshop. They come straight to me. I'll coordinate with our instructors in that local market to call you and get a presentation set up, or if they want to enroll their folks in the e-learning, it can all be done through our website. We also post some of our content from social media at oldnational.com/smart money. 30-second clips that we post that we had all of our interns and younger folks do at the bank on 30-second clips on little money management tips as well. So we're trying to build up that educational site within our website to help push that as well.
That's awesome. And any final tips for somebody starting out? They want to maybe grow to what you're doing there at Old National. Maybe they're just starting or thinking about building a financial education program. What strategies would you share with them that you think are truly beneficial?
Yeah, so what I loved was having a uniform in-person curriculum and online product, and who we partner with through you. To me, that made it so much easier to replicate consistent education throughout our entire footprint. So, we used to just be a couple states, and over the last 25 years, I've seen us expand. It's so much easier to pick up a model that works and replicate it. But I do recommend starting small. Trying to take on too much too quick. In the beginning, I'm like, I can handle this. I can do this across the entire footprint. But then I realized I'd probably lose my wife and my family and things like that, right? So being able to design a program where you can get your own employees engaged, because what I'm finding out is they love going out and volunteering in their community. They love helping people change lives. And when you have that local presence versus the guy from Evansville, Indiana, traveling for a one-day seminar, they're able to build the relationship. So if you're looking to start this, do discussions with your different markets. Talk to them and say, who here likes teaching education? Who's done junior achievement in the past, right? And it's not to say we don't do any of those other programs, which we do, but this gave us a way to build onto that existing educational outreach. but start small, expand slowly. Because if you go too big too quick, you never want to over promise and under deliver. So I'm a big fan about promising what you can and over deliver that. And as your program start to grow, it's easier to modify it. But I'd say start small, grow big versus the opposite.
Very sound advice. And I really appreciate everything you've done. You're making a huge difference in the communities you're serving. You're helping a lot of people here with some great advice for them. And I can't thank you enough for the time you've taken with me here today. I wish you nothing but success in the future. Thanks again, Ben.
Thank you, Vince. I couldn't do it without your guys' support and help. And it's been a pleasure to work with you and be here today with you.
You're very kind. Thank you.